Here follows an extract from my book Artful Designs, available from Amazon. Chapter 7, Part 2. I am truly sorry to be going over all of this again, Miss Bickerton, said DCI James. It must be so very tedious for you that I'm disturbing your work again for the same old rigmarole. You must do your job, of course, said Sally. Do you want to stay here or shall we go and get a coffee? I'd appreciate a breath of air and a change of scenery. Let's go to the place where you got those take-out drinks from. The coffee was delicious. As they walked, Sally chatted about the people at the gallery and the work that they did there. We are usually such a happy team. It's so sad that it's been knocked. Things are settling down gradually though, thank goodness. Theo is more like his usual self. He did take that security guard out for that pint as suggested. Well, quite a few pints from what I can gather. I think Brian was so relieved to know that Theo didn't hold him responsible. It was a very stressful night for him. I'm sure he's been through worse in his army days, but he does take the theft personally. It's good to hear that morale is on the mend. What about relations between Theo and Scott? Theo called in at Scott's home to apologise for his initial reaction. He took some flowers for Mrs. Malkin too. I'm sure that Scott is glad of the apology, but it'll take some time for mutual trust to build. It's a step in the right direction though, and it shows that the intent is right. The coffees had been served and they found a quiet corner where they could chat. This was the cue to begin the official interview. If you would, please cast your mind back to that Friday. I know all about Finn and his pals turning up, but was there anything else in the course of the morning that was a little out of the ordinary? Even if it seems totally irrelevant, please don't refrain from mentioning it. Any little thing at all. Sally sipped her coffee as she brought that day back into her mind. Although there was no flash of recognition, she recounted her thoughts to DCI James. The builders were coming and going as usual. I couldn't say if there were any new men that day. You'd have to speak to Millwoods. They are overseeing the building work here. Maybe they subcontract parts out to various other workmen. What a small world. Millwoods are overseeing my sister's village flower festival too. That's certainly a variety of work. Nevertheless, I suppose bricks are bricks, whatever you do with them. True enough, unlike art. No piece of art is the same and everybody reacts differently to each piece. Everybody's personal taste is so distinctive and firmly held. Oh, that's a point, exclaimed Sally. I've just remembered that Rick came to see the gallery not long after Drew left. He came to see Drew but had just missed him. Who was Rick? Asked James. As usual, the technique of making the interview feel informal and relaxed, with chit-chat about inconsequential side topics, had worked its magic and potentially relevant information had floated to the surface unbidden. Very often it worked out that the harder somebody tried to be helpful, the less that they could actually think of anything useful to add. The displacement activity of drinking coffee, the relaxed atmosphere of the coffee shop, and the pleasant chit-chat about builders and flower festivals meant that Sally's imagination wasn't forced. This was much more conducive. Rick is a visiting curator from Amsterdam. He's spending time at the Manchester Art Gallery. He struck up something of a friendship with Drew, and they're currently attempting to convert each other's tastes. I've heard Drew mention him, although not by name. Drew said that he was trying to convert a colleague to the merits of Constable during his talk for the WI. Weren't you asked to give the talk first? Sally blushed and at least had the grace not to hide her guilty expression. I said that I was busy that night, but I wasn't. I couldn't face the thought of a bunch of old women, and I didn't really know quite what it was they expected from me, so I bottled out. Drew seemed happy enough to pick it up, so I left it at that. I had arranged to be with Theo, but he didn't hang around at my house for long and left to do some work. He can't rest until everything's safely packed away. I need to warn you to be careful how you refer to my sister. She's a member of the WI and wouldn't thank you for referring to her as an old woman. Nevertheless, I can quite understand your misconception of the ladies, but that was the WI of the old school, and not necessarily any the worse for that. Did you know that the Isle of Man WI groups provide tea and cakes for the motorbike fans during the TT races? The Glastonbury WI does the same during the rock festivals. They dress up with vintage hairdos and bright lipstick. Can you imagine how much cake they get through? It's all homemade too. They insist that they won't run out though, in true WI fashion. Actually, I read an article in a police bulletin referring to the WI as this country's largest criminal organisation. Sally actually choked with laughter at this moment. I'm serious. All the berries that they pick, tons and tons of the stuff, are picked from public places and then sold. That's illegal. Nevertheless, I don't think Downing Street or Her Majesty are considering pressing charges. This country owes a debt to their industry with the preserves, as it saved our nation from starvation during the war. A government initiative couldn't have done it, but each village, in fact each individual in their own kitchen, taking the initiative not to allow anything to go to waste, kept this country on its feet. We'll let them keep on with the blackberries. I wish I'd gone now. I feel positively dull in comparison. It is true, or at Mossleigh at any rate, that there are some old women, but they bake a mighty sponge cake. You did miss out there. My sister told me that at the last committee meeting a member arrived and, standing in the doorway, made a grand announcement exclaiming in all seriousness, "Breaking news on the sponge front." The groundbreaking announcement was that sponge cooked in a fan-assisted oven required a higher fat content than traditional ovens in order for the sponge to rise well. Everybody fell about laughing, but I can vouch for the fact because the victorious sponge I ate earlier was out of this world. Sally laughed out loud. I didn't think I'd be interrogated about sponge and jam today. I'm afraid that I only know about art and a little bit about textiles. What a small world view I have. I do apologise. I forget my position so easily. Surely cake is the priority in all of our lives. However, please tell me about Rick's visit to the gallery and I'll try and put cake out of my mind for a short while. There's nothing much to it. Rick came to find Drew because he'd promised to show Rick the Constable paintings they'd been debating. He's tried to see them before, but they've never managed it yet. Theo heard what Rick had come for and took him down to the archives with Finn and his cronies. He stayed for about 20 minutes and then left. That's really helpful, thank you. Gradually the picture unfolds, if you'll pardon the expression, and eventually we'll see everything that we need to. The Manchester Art Gallery isn't far from here, is it? I'll walk over there now and try and speak to Rick myself. Before I go, can you tell me when the security guard from that night is next on duty? I think that Brian is on nights again. If so, he'll be in at 6 o'clock. That should work in nicely. If you could let him know that I'll be along shortly, please, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Of course. I hope that I've been vaguely useful. You've been a great help. All these little bits and pieces will eventually form a complete whole. I've made it a personal mission to get to the heart of this case, so don't you worry. In the meantime, don't forget to increase the quantity of margarine or butter in your sponge cakes. You won't regret it. As if I ever switched the oven on. But thank you for thinking that I might, I think. For the full book of Artful Designs, available in paperback or as an ebook, follow the link in the cards in the description box or find details on my website at sharonbill.com. Thanks for listening.